Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today we are back with part 2 of our healing builds updated guide videos. So in this particular video, we are going to be going over heavy armor healing builds. If you missed the previous one, that was for light armor healing builds. We'll put a link to that up in the top right and in the description down below, and probably at the end of the video as well. But I decided that the best way to do this would be to split it into light armor healing builds and heavy armor healing builds, otherwise the video is just going to be too long. In terms of medium armor healing builds, I just don't really feel like there's too much benefit in medium armor right now. There's probably like a few things, and I'm not saying that it's terrible, but personally I feel like you either go light or heavy. You've got lots of mobility or you've got lots of ability to take damage, and you choose which one you want to go for. So like with the previous video, we are going to be splitting this into PVE and PVP as well. So we'll start off with the PVE side of things. This is for like healing expeditions and stuff, and the weapons of choice remain the same as it is in light armor. You want to be going for the Void Gauntlet and the Life Staff, of course. The Void Gauntlet is really just a no-brainer when it comes to PVE. It is one of the most supportive weapons out there, with providing a damage boost, and then you've got some healing from the Orb of Decay, you've got some extra healing from the Essence Rupture as well, and also the ability to get mana on demand. Just Void Gauntlet, really good addition to the healer's kit. And then obviously the Life Staff is there because it's the healing weapon in the game. Now looking at the mastery for each respective weapon, as we previously mentioned, we take both Oblivion, Orb of Decay, and Essence Rupture all fully maxed out. I do pick up the Glimpse of the Void over here, but this is kind of just there because we could get it. Sometimes you'll be able to get 4 stacks if you land a particularly big Orb of Decay in a large group. Most of the time, this is just not going to come in handy, but you can grab it there anyway. If you don't want it, you could take it something like Efficient Harvest instead, and then everything else there is just to sort of reduce our mana costs and give us a little bit of extra healing where we can, and also lower cooldowns on the abilities when we land them on the enemies. Life Staff builds for PvE, I would recommend that you either take Beacon or Orb of Protection. If you are going to take Orb of Protection, then you do want to make sure that you have the Mending Protection perk. This is fairly similar to what we covered in the light armor healing build. Regardless of whether you're in heavy or light, it doesn't really modify the heals too much in terms of like how they function. The amount that they put out is different, but yeah, the functionality is still the same. So we're still rocking Sacred Ground as one of the best heals in the game. Light's Embrace is an insanely good single target tank top up, and just to anybody else who takes a burst of damage. And then Beacon or Orb, depending on your preference. Only Orb of Protection if you do have the Mending Protection perk on a piece of armor. Otherwise, just go for Beacon. But this is like the one size fits all. You could also imagine that you take these 3 points and also Spirits United, and instead you go all in on the Orb of Protection. Now going to the armor, obviously you want to be going full heavy, every single piece in heavy. There's no point like putting a couple pieces in light. If you're on heavy, you just go full heavy. Now looking at the helmet, the most important perks that you want to be getting here is like Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion, plus one of the perks for your Life Staff or Void Gauntlet. So we've got Refreshing plus Fortifying Sacred Ground, Invigorated there. Sometimes comes in handy, but not always like super huge. And obviously we get it the 625 gear score, so we can do expeditions with it. Chest piece here, Freedom, Refreshing, and Putrefying Scream. Freedom is much more of a PvP perk, but this was armor that I was originally using for PvP and also for PvE. I was trying to get like ultimate value, an armor set that we could use in both forms of content. But Refreshing and Putrefying Scream, the 2 most important perks here. Scream is not necessarily needed too much for PvE. Sometimes it can come in handy if you do have an Indomitable week, which I believe we do now. Enemies have Vampiric, so you can run up and scream at them and reduce the incoming healing so they don't heal as much off the damage they do. The gloves, again, this is much more for the PvP side of thing, although physical aversion can help a lot if the tank loses aggro of any archers or musketeers. It can reduce the incoming damage you take from those. And then Revitalizing Beacon is there if, again, you take aggro away. Revitalizing Beacon increases your healing power on yourself by a pretty significant amount, but this is kind of more leaning towards the PvP thing. The legs here, we've got Nullifying Oblivion, Refreshing Evasion, and Resilient. Resilient, again, is more of a PvP orientated thing, but if you imagine, again, that I wanted armor that worked for both forms of content, then that is why we have here, and it's not necessarily like they're bad in PvE. Refreshing Evasion, very good, and Nullifying Oblivion can be very handy on Genesis weeks, because you want to strip away the fortify that the soldiers apply to themselves. And then finally the boots, we've got Mending Protection, as we previously mentioned. If you have Orb of Protection, you want to make sure that you have the perk with this. And then we got Refreshing and Vigor, just for a little bit of extra survivability and uptime on our heals. Jewelry is the same across all of my builds. I just tried to get the best jewelry that works for everything. So we've got Divine, Fortified, and Health. Divine so we can heal ourselves some more. Health is like an absolute must-have. And then Fortified, Comes in handy with the Orb of Protection if you are going to be running that one. And I think it also extends the Fortifying Sacred Ground as well. The ring, this is probably one of the most important parts of the build. Like, I can't stress it enough. Have Hearty on your ring. If you don't have Hearty on your ring, you're only going to be able to dodge 2 times. If you have Hearty, you can do 3 dodges, even though you're in heavy armor. This is one of the reasons why medium isn't really as like appealing anymore, because previously the exciting thing about medium is you have access to 3 dodges, but now you can do it just with a Hearty ring. So Hearty Sacred, and then whatever perk you want to get in the 3rd slot if you are looking for legendary, refreshing evasion, or leeching in my case. Leeching not the best perk, but it does work. People ask me if there is any good jewelry you can get as a drop to replace these. And as we mentioned in our previous video, there's nothing to cover the ring. There are no Hearty Sacred rings out there that drop, as far as I'm aware, other than like old rings where they're randomly generated perks. But in terms of the amulet, you could look to pick up the Keeper's Pendant. This drops from Mutated Dynasty, has Health, Refreshing, and Purify. Purify is not like a super amazing perk, but it can be pretty handy. There's no replacement ring, so just get a crafted ring with Hearty and Sacred if you can. And then finally, the earring. I think Healthy Toast is a very, very important perk if you're going to be in heavy armor, as you're likely going to have a bigger health pool in heavy armor if you're running the 100 Constitution bonus, which will quickly, look at the stats here. Increase max health by 10% of your physical armor. You're going to have more physical armor, you're going to have a bigger health pool, and therefore Healthy Toast gets you big value. When you drink a mana potion, you get 10% of your health back, which often can be quite a large heal. Refreshing Toast means we can drink those potions more often, and Refreshing gives us more uptime on our heals. Finally, looking at my Void Gauntlet and my Life Staff, we've just gone for a Blessed Void Gauntlet here. The other perks are honestly not really relevant at all. If you really wanted to get a good Void Gauntlet, you just get Blessed, Refreshing, and then basically anything else you feel like. And then the Life Staff, we have Blessed, Refreshing Move, and Refreshing. This is the Will of the Ancients, and it drops from Lazarus, and I highly, highly recommend you go farm it in basically any healing content you're doing in the game. There is one other semi-alternative to Life Staffs that I've been made aware of. It's called the Reluctant Savior. It drops from Tempest Heart, and it has Refreshing Evasion and Chain Nature. Chain Nature is a pretty dead perk when it comes to healing, but Refreshing Evasion is actually pretty interesting on the Life Staff, but although I do feel like this might be more relevant for PvP than PvE. Going into the stats here, I like to get a little bit more risky with the amount of Constitution and Focus, like sort of ratio that I have here. Because we're in heavy armor, we can take quite a bit more hits without needing to put too many points into Constitution. So we can make up for the fact that heavy armor doesn't give us the healing bonus by dumping more points into Focus. So this is without any food. We're at 319 Focus, 151 Constitution. Depending on like how adventurous you're feeling, you could take maybe like 10 more points into Constitution and then go ahead and eat the roasted rabbit to get to 200 con and still stay above 300 Focus, providing you have 600 Gear Scar armor. But in general, I would say like 150, 300 is a pretty like safe spot to be in heavy armor. But you could go for the 200 Constitution if you're still feeling like you're a bit too squishy. Okay, so moving over to the PvP side of heavy armor healing. Now, one thing that I do want to sort of say as we go into this section is if you want to be healing in PvP and you want to be the best at doing it, I really just recommend that you stick to light armor and rapier. It is an insanely good build. I don't think anything else competes with it. The next best thing, honestly, would be heavy armor and rapier with basically the exact same sort of stats and stuff that we looked at in the light armor video. So again, if you're interested in PvP healing and you want to be competitive, just go check out the light armor healing video. But we are going to present some alternatives here just for a little bit of fun. The other build that I'm going to propose to you guys is Sword and Shield with the Life Staff. This is commonly known as the Paladin build back in the day. And this is, again, for a little bit of CC, so we have some ways to, like, bash people. You could take the Shield Rush if you wanted to, but the stun is pretty nice. And then also, if you get yourself caught in a Ice Shower or a Gravity Well, you can use the Leaping Strike to get out of it. And then also, there's a good old combo where you stand in your Sacred Ground, you pop Defiant stance, and then you just live for a really, 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 really long time. Provided there's not like 10 people trying to kill you. I think this build actually has some pretty nice support utility for your team. You can flex in 2 different ways, so you can give everybody a bit of a damage boost if you want to. If you want to be sort of sitting on the sideline, whip out the Sword and Shield while you're waiting for the Life Staff abilities to come off cooldown, give everybody a bit of a damage boost. And you can also go on the other side of it and give everybody a damage reduction boost. So if your team is caught in a Gravity Well or something like that, you can put the heals down next to them like so, and then whip out the Sword and Shield and just get them in range of the damage reduction there. While your heals are coming back off cooldown, you can give them a 30% damage reduction on top of the Fortify from Fortifying Sacred Ground. It's actually like not bad as long as you don't get sucked into the middle of the death pool yourself, which you are at risk of doing by being so close to them. So yeah, again, not quite as good as Lifestaff Rapier, but it is pretty fun, and the variations that you can do on the build, there's a little bit of choice here. So Shield Bash, I think, is a good one to like take somebody out of the combat. I like to jump onto the enemy healer, Shield Bash them, and then go and do some healing myself. And then you have a little bit of choice as to whether you want to take Shield Rush, again, for another like CC kind of, and also if you get Fortifying Shield Rush, it's pretty strong. Defiant Stance can sometimes be a bit more of like a passive sort of, if you're like, you know, you're at your last option, you can just pop that and wait for other things to come off cooldown or wait for some peel. And then finally, the defensive formation of the leadership is down to your own individual choice, but absolute passives that I think you should get: Sturdy Shield and Recuperation, really, really important. Also getting defensive training for the Fortify. The more Fortify you can get in heavy armor, because you're not going to be able to like dodge out of enemy attacks as much as you can in light armor, so we're really looking to Fortify as much as we can, and that is where we're going to move onto our armor, and we use this for all of our builds, for both the Sword and Shield Paladin build and also with the Warhammer as well. Now, as I did with the previous healing builds video, I somehow managed to, again, exclude the Lifestaff Mastery from this particular video, at least on the PvP side of things, so we'll really quickly just put this in on the edit. Everything remains the same as you would see from the PvE side of things. The only thing that I would recommend changing is Mending Touch. It's not going to be super reliable that you can pull this off in PvP, so instead swap it to Enchanted Justice for a little bit of extra incoming healing. And then you have a little bit of choice over here. You can take the Inspire with the Light's Embrace to give yourself a little bit of stamina, because you're going to be dodging through enemy attacks a lot. So you can imagine we could do a little like demonstration here where we like dodge, and then we can get some stamina back when we heal with it, and then we can, you know, it comes back and we get another chunk of stamina back every time. So it allows you to keep the dodges going, which is going to be something that you wanted to do a lot with the Shirking Fortification, which you're going to see soon in the video. But yeah, once again, quick look at the Lifestaff Mastery here. Beacon is generally going to be the go-to for reasons that we will explain again soon in the video. So taking a look at the perks that I think are important, having 1 or 2 Freedom in PvP is going to make a big difference for getting you out of stuns, so you can cast heals faster and you don't die in a stun, because that still can happen in heavy armor. So Freedom is something that we look to pick up on at least like 1 or 2 pieces. And then Shirking Fortification, this is one of the newer perks into the game, and I actually think it is very, very powerful, borderline OP. If you can get this in like 2 or 3 pieces of gear. The interesting thing about this, and actually we'll go for a live demonstration on it, so each individual attack counts as a proc of it. So if there are 2 enemies attacking you and you have 1 piece of Shirking Fortification gear, then that goes up 2 times. So rather than being 3.8, it's actually 7.6. So like almost 8%. So if we dodge here, let's see if I can actually time it right. Come on, Baggage, you can do this. There we go. We got 2 stacks there because 2 enemies are attacking at the same time. That's 4 stacks. And then see if we can get a few more. It's always kind of trickier to do with AI, interestingly enough. And then if I can dodge at the right time, there's 5 stacks there. So you can imagine if we're actually like, you know, with the enemy on us, who like sort of attack in a bit more of a consistent pattern, because the enemies like they do like an attack and then they pause, and then they do an attack and then they pause. But the Shirking Fortification, you can stack it really, really high. So we were at like 5 times 4% there, or basically close to 4%, which is a 20% fortify. So if you can get this to proc like a few times, it's going to be pretty insane damage reduction, like really, 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 really good damage reduction actually. So you can just see here, if we go Sacred Ground and then we switch to our Sword and Shield and we pop Defiant Stance and then we just do a few dodges here, like look, I'm taking like no damage at all. And of course these are like level 41 enemies, so it's not like the most crazy example, but we're not even holding up our shield, and we are not dying, basically. So Shirking Fortification, I think, is a pretty damn interesting perk, and I think it's maybe being slept on, but I could also be wrong and maybe overvaluing it a bit. But I would highly recommend that if you are interested in playing any heavy armor healing builds, you look to get a couple pieces again, just like with Freedom. But moving on to the other pieces of armor, we've got Resilient, of course. Resilient, just a staple of PvP, and you want to make sure that you have like usually about 3 of these, but as much Resilient as you can get is going to help you stay alive. Fortifying Sacred Ground is just a no-brainer. It's used in all of our healing builds because it basically turns your Sacred Ground into Aura Protection, where it adds like a Fortify component to it. And then again, we've got another set of Shirking Fortification and Resilient here. I also have Repulsing Shield Bash, so we can like knock people back further. It's not super necessary, and sometimes it can actually be a bit of a hindrance because you can knock people out of like gravity wells and stuff, but I think it's a pretty fun perk. Also, you could get the clear out here if you didn't want to get on your Warhammer for some reason, but Resilient, Shirking Fortification, the two most important perks that we have here on the gloves. On the legs, we have Resilient and Revitalizing Beacon. Resilience there for the previous reasons we stated, but Revitalizing Beacon I think is a very important perk to take in PvP heavy armor healing, as you're going to be using your health pool as a resource much more than you would in light armor. So being able to increase your self-healing is a big issue. Like it's very beneficial. Even if you don't cast the beacon like on yourself, you can just cast it over on your team. You still get the increase in self-healing. It's worth mentioning. So yeah, Revitalizing Beacon actually a pretty clutch perk. And I do think it is one that you want to make sure you get if you're interested in heavy armor healing in PvP. Finally, going over to my boots. These are a bit of a wild card. I managed to get these from an Outpost Rush cache. And again, we've got the Freedom, the Shirking Fortification, and the Resilience. So 3 really, really good perks there for PvP. We didn't mention this, but each armor piece with the perk increases the potency of the effect. So yeah, we can get some really big fortifies with the 1, 2, 3 different sets of it. Every time we dodge through a single enemy attack, we're getting close to a 12% fortify. But if we dodge through 2 enemies attack at the same time, that is a 24. Well, not quite, we're rounding up, but you can see like it gets pretty insane pretty quickly just through dodging through 2 different enemy attacks, proccing all 3 of these at the same time. It's some big fortify on your dodges. These boots do have strength on them, which is a little bit suboptimal, but we suck it up the 10 strength. We just, we'll throw away 10 stats for how good everything else is on these boots. In terms of the jewelry, it's the same as we've covered it in the light armor healing, and it's the same as we covered in the heavy armor healing. I just like this jewelry. It's very, very good. It's all crafted, so the alternatives we previously mentioned, you could look to get Keeper's Pendant. Although I do think in heavy armor healing, specifically for PvP, you do really want to try and get Health and Divine. Those amulets are pretty expensive, but because you are going to be using your health as a resource much more frequently, Divine is pretty important, but health is just like a must-have on the amulet. Hearty and Sacred, the staples for the ring. This is the same across light armor and heavy armor. Hearty is needed for the extra dodge and Sacred for the outgoing healing. The third perk is Leeching in this case. As we mentioned, it's not like super optimal. Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion would be very good. And then finally, Healthy Toast, Refreshing Toast, and Refreshing. Healthy Toast and Refreshing Toast, I think, are the 2 most important perks to get for PvP heavy armor healing, as you've got a big chunky health pool in heavy armor, so Healthy Toast is just going to give you much more like value in terms of when you drink the potion, you get more health back. My sword and shield that I use for my paladin build, I'm actually using the shield from the winter event, which is no longer available. So if you guys didn't pick up this shield, then another good shield that I would recommend is Portent, which you get from Tempest Heart. It's got Sturdy, Slash Ward, and Constitution. Slash Ward, very good against those great axes. Sturdy, very good against everything. And the Constitution there, because you don't really want to get strength on your shield, as we are just looking to be a healer at the end of the day. We're not really looking to do damage. We're just trying to stay alive and trying to keep our teammates alive. One of the reasons why I like the Festive Sled a lot is because the stats are bugged and it gives 25 Constitution for some reason instead of 15 Constitution. And also the Frozen Shield Ward is very relevant in today's meta of ice gauntlets being everywhere. So if you were using Portent, instead you want to go for a sword that maybe like Omen here, which you get again from the new dungeon as well, Tempest Heart. So you got Trenchant Recovery, Life Stealing, and Refreshing Ward, and this just has Constitution on it as well. So going over to the stats for the heavy armor healing builds, 200 Constitution and 250 plus Focus I think is the sweet spot to be at. Currently I have had to eat some food to get over that 250 amount, but that 30 mana on any self or group kill, I think, is a pretty juicy perk, even in PvP. Just every time somebody dies, if your team was even remotely associated with it, you'll get some mana back, which can help. And then 200 Constitution to take advantage of that, big armor bonus that you're going to get, another 20% increase in armor. So you can really play around with your health pool as a resource instead of needing to dodge every single attack like you do in light armor. We've got 15 points in strength, but this is just coming from like the sword and shield and the boots that we mentioned before. And then the last thing to talk about is gems in the armor. So in PvE and PvP, as you can see down here, I have a lot of physical armor, but I don't have too much elemental armor. So I generally tend to make up for that by rocking opals in my PvE armor. So you can see here, everything is an opal, which gives me elemental damage absorption, and that is relevant for fire and void weeks and other elements that we'll get in the future as well, and mutations. On the PvP side of things, I actually go ahead and take the ice gems, because the damage that I'm most consistently dying to is those ice gauntlets with ice showers and ice storms. So the new and improved Ice Ward gems give you 6% damage absorption for each one. And then we do throw a couple of diamonds in there just for a bit more physical damage absorption, but also leaning into the elemental as well. In terms of the weapons, for Void Gauntlets and for Life Staffs, when you're healing with them, you want the Diamond because that gives you more healing. This is the same as it is across the board with light and heavy, PvE and PvP. However, on the sword, we can't really do any healing with that. The same with the Warhammer, so we opt to go for the Amber Gem. And we choose the lowest tier Amber Gem because the scaling actually ends up being better with that than it does with the higher tiers. If you want a full explanation as to why that is, I'll put a link in the description down below. It's pretty complicated. It would make this video like another 5-10 minutes longer, but yeah. Amber Gems for damage weapons, Diamonds for healing weapons, Opals in PvE, and then in PvP, I would actually recommend going for Ice Gems because those are going to be your biggest enemy when you're a slow-moving, tanky healer. But yeah, that is heavy armor healing in New World. I will give you guys another updated video if we have any other changes to the build or any new weapons or anything like that comes out, especially with the PvP 3v3 arenas. I'm sure there's going to be a meta for that. So if you do want to see those videos, like I say, make sure you subscribe. But I will see you guys all in the next one.